I've been down the Hershey Road.
I mean, I don't like chocolate, but I don't mind driving down the Hershey Highway.
Wow, that is so
And
true.
To the Down in Front podcast, the official podcast of downinfrontpodcast.com. My name is Warren, and what we do is typically we review a movie, a TV show, something that we like seen on TV or in Twitter, and we review it with a bunch of my best friends while we all consume some sort of beverage. And tonight we are going to be reviewing the newest film by new director Bradley Cooper, A Star is Born, featuring Bradley Cooper himself and Lady Gaga and a bunch of other great cast members. So I'm super pumped to talk about that. Before we talk about the movie, I'm going to toss it over to two of my best friends. I have the mouth of the South himself, who gets kicked out of amusement parks all over the time. Rylan, how's it going, man? What you been drinking and what you been watching?
Hey, how's it going this evening?
It's going well. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. So what I'm drinking right now, I'm finishing off the last little bit of this Hochstadter's Slow and Low Rock and Rye 84 proof whiskey I'm working on. It is available at your local apothecaries everywhere. But what I've been watching recently, I checked out Joe Rogan's new stand-up on Netflix, Joe Rogan's Strange Times. I like Joe Rogan. I think he's a good interview person on YouTube and everything, and I like his podcast. And this stand-up, I'd never seen a Joe Rogan stand-up before, so I like that it was just 1 hour, and it was just like quick-witted jokes that he's told, and it's not like anything. He's not being super provocative or anything. He's basically performing highbrow dick and fart jokes for the most part. And I enjoyed it. It's very South Park humor, which was fun, and it's pretty much it doesn't overstay its welcome. So that's the cool thing about it.
That's on my wish list right now. I just came out, like you said, and I've been waiting for us to get, me and my roommate, to get like an hour together where we can go. His last stand-up from like 2015, 2016, the first 10 minutes had us like crying, laughing.
Triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, I think this one, I mean, I enjoyed it just as much. Probably not as, I'd say, quote unquote, important in Joe Rogan's life compared to the other one, but it's still good to see that he'll take the time to do like a nice classic stand-up movie as well. The other thing I've been watching, I went and saw White Boy Rick in the movie theaters, which stars Matthew McConaughey and a young new artist. I forget his name, but I like gangster films, and this movie bothered me a lot just because you expect in a gangster film for the gangster to be doing a lot of gangster shit, and you really don't get that in this movie. So even though there's like a lot of hype, it's based on a book, it's about like the youngest drug kingpin ever in America. But you never get that feeling in this movie either. Everything's like kind of behind closed doors, and you get a lot of conversation pieces. Whether that was done for budgetary reasons or just because of availability of actors or anything, we don't know. But it comes off as a kind of a paint by numbers, mediocre gang movie, and it doesn't really make the main character that interesting. So I'd pass on it.
That's a bummer. I saw so much like marketing and advertisement for that film in like different sections. Like I always would like you turn my head, turn it off or just leave or something like that when it comes to that trailer. But I felt like that trailer was coming on all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that when that movie came out. So that's crazy. That's kind of a bummer because, I like McConaughey's work, but oh well.
Yeah, and McConaughey does his McConaughey thing in this movie, and it's interesting to hear him affect a Detroit, Michigan accent, being from Texas, and he kind of pulls it off, which is pretty neat. But it's still like you feel like this was just a movie made so McConaughey could be nominated for an Oscar this coming fall, which I don't think it should for this movie.
I was just going to ask you that. Like, did you hear any Oscar buzz from this?
Not really, no. I mean, it's good performances, but not something amazing.
Fair. Well, I'm pumped to hear your thoughts on this beautiful movie that we're going to talk about tonight. So, as always, I'm excited to see your face.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to toss it over to one of my best friends. So we grew up together. We knew each other way back in Lowell. The Shredder, Mr. Blewett, Blues Clues. How's it going, man? What you sipping on and what you been watching?
Yeah, man. Do you remember going to the mailroom with Steve back in the day? Yeah, that was good. Growing up together.
So weird.
It is mail time. Hey, I'm doing real good right now. I'm sipping down on a Backflash New England India Pale Ale, which we shouldn't be just based on the subject matter of tonight. I feel like tonight would have been a better water night, but here we are. It's solid. I honestly just got it because the can art is like Alston.
Oh,
which is like
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw it sitting there and I'm like, yeah, that's basically how I drink beer now. I just go into this back freezer and just whatever the coolest can art is available, I consume. As for what I've been watching, I went to the first live taping of a podcast ever, which would be awesome if this ever went on the road. I saw the gals in Making a Murder talk about murders. So not to promote to them too much because they have enough fans. It was also interesting because 90% of the people there were like 25 to 35-year-old women. And so that was an interesting environment to be in, considering that most of the time, if I leave my house, it's to go to a Celtics game, and that's all dudes. So it's like it was very, very different. They were funny though. Let's see. I watched Chris D'Elia, however the hell you pronounce his names, last stand-up, and that was pretty funny. He had some good shock factor jokes. I haven't really watched a movie. Oh, no, totally. Watched this movie called The Last Shift, and I don't think I talked about it because I wasn't on Hellfest. It was freaking amazing. It's on Netflix. It stars basically this one lady that I don't remember her name. She's like a nobody. And it's her as a cop. I know, I'm killing her right now. It's her as a cop on her last night in this old precinct facility. She literally just has to sit there and guard the place, an empty building, until daybreak. And then she gets relieved and the whole building gets knocked down. And the movie is that 12 hours. And it is phenomenal. Scared the absolute hell out of me. Could recommend it for fear boners, but I think it came out like 6 or 7 years ago. So not super recent.
That's never stopped a fear boner.
Not at all. The Last Shift by director Matthew Moore.
Yeah, who's the girl?
Jacques Shy.
That doesn't sound
Cool
right.
name.
No. Okay, this is the first thing I looked up on IMDb. So it's like maybe I don't know.
Well, let me make sure I got the right name. That'd be amazing. Here I am, like espousing these great things about it. Last Shift.
Well, as Blewett takes a look into that, I'm going to go and says, my name is Warren. I will be the host for this evening. I am currently sipping on some Jameson and Diet Coke because I need to watch the figure. And it's been delicious. And I've been watching the newer, I thought it was a movie. And so I think I was up till about maybe 3:30, 4 in the morning, kind of bored last night and couldn't really sleep. And so I just started watching something on Netflix. And I'm like, you know what, let's take a look instead of watching something else I've already seen. Let me find something new on Netflix and let me watch this live animated movie, TV show, however you want to call it, of Bleach on Netflix. Man, I did not like this first episode.
Oh, is it episodic? It's not
a
movie?
I'm not sure because I was getting super tired too, and I was like, I'm kind of just done with this. Just let it end so I can see how it ends, and I'm good. I can just go back and watch the regular Bleach. I just didn't like really anything about it. They changed up the story. It's like the stereotypical why you shouldn't make live action live action movies. But I'm sure people are going to like it. I think Mocha and maybe even Abbott said that they had saw it a part of the podcast, so I'm curious to see what they thought. But I'm probably not going to continue it at all. So I'm still looking for something new. Not really, but I am definitely looking for something new in the background that I can watch besides me and Emma's continuing marathoning of Mad Men, which is great. So that's what I've been watching.
So I looked it up. Juliana Hartkavy is the actress name in this movie called Last Shift. And she is most commonly known as Dina Drake or Black Canary from the Arrow DC universe.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're a fan of any of those shows, primarily Arrow and her work on that, I'm sure you'll love Last Shift. And if you like horror movies, you will love this. Scared the absolute hell out of me. Sorry, Warren.
So, no, you're good. So that's from 2014 by director Anthony DiBlasi.
Yep.
And that name sounds very familiar.
I think it's because it's, isn't that the mayor of New York?
Yeah.
Yeah.
De Blasio.
De Blasio.
No, as a fucking director, damn it. I'll take a look because that name sounds familiar. But I'm surprised because that movie, at least IMDb, and I stopped watching a bunch of these sort of ratings, but it only got a 5.4 rating on IMDb. So curious if Blewett is recommending it, if that's going to hurt our ratings or not.
To be fair, I was completely sober. My two roommates were pretty stoned, and they thought it was the craziest thing they've ever seen. I thought it was pretty freaking awesome too, though. So I'd take that how you will.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I'd want to take that, but okay. I may check it out. It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pumped, guys. Thanks for kind of joining tonight. We're going to be giving you a full review. We're going to get into A Star is Born by director Bradley Cooper. But before we start talking about the movie, we're actually going to get into our spoiler section a bit early. So I would say if you haven't seen the movie yet, what's wrong with you? Definitely go check this movie out. If you can, check it out in either IMAX or Dolby. I think the sound quality will definitely help you out. I know we talk about AMC Dolby a lot, but just in any case, even if it's not AMC, definitely spend the few more bucks to get a good production that has the quality sound, because I think that's only going to help you out. So definitely go check that out in the upgraded sort of cinema if you can. So we're going to get into our full sort of spoiler section, and we're going to take a break really quickly, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
And we are back, and we are the Down in Front podcast. My name is Warren. I'm with Brylan, and I'm with Blewett. All of them call him Mocha Mike, but they all look alike. And tonight we're giving you a full spoiler section review of A Star is Born. So from now on, we will be reviewing the movie. If you haven't seen it, I would pause the recording right now. Definitely go check out this movie because it is pretty good. Come on back and then join us. So we're going to break up the movie in a couple different sections. So we're going to, as usually, we talk about the acting and the story a bit. And then the other couple moments that we're going to be talking about is the music and the directing, because it is going to be some original music and some original work. And Bradley Cooper is the director. And then we're also going to talk about the depiction of addiction in the actual movie itself. They do kind of talk about not only alcoholism, but the overall use of kind of drug use and how that affect people's lives. So I'm going to toss it over to the Mouth of the South. And Brylan, go ahead and open it up for us, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, wow, this movie. I'm going to start first by talking a little bit about the story, because the actual plot of this movie is very simple and it's very straightforward. And I mean, that's for purpose. I mean, this is the third or fourth version of this same story as well, just told in a different way. But the cool thing about it is keeping the story this simple allows for the acting and also the music to kind of tell the story to you, which is I think, fantastic. Like, I wouldn't call this a musical, even though it's based on a musical. I feel like musicals still, like, the songs drive the story a little bit more than what these songs do, but the songs definitely set up the tone, and like they do lead to kind of like underpinnings of what's going to happen to these characters too. So I guess this would be kind of like a musical narrative hybrid, but it works really amazingly well. And one of those big reasons is because of Bradley Cooper. And Bradley Cooper, I didn't know he could sing, but he sings really well. He sounds like a country fried Dave Grohl in this movie, which is really cool.
Nice.
And even his normal
the night.
But also, like, seeing Bradley Cooper act in this, he's definitely transforms himself into a character, which is really cool to see, especially with all the demons that this character is facing as well. So you do see, like, his skin's always super shiny and red, and those eyes that stick out, those piercing eyes. And his tale is a tragic one, even though he is at the top of this game when we see this movie first open up. Even though we see him drinking and everything, it's cool to see, like, wow, he's amazingly talented. But then when you start to learn more about him, like, he didn't really know his parents. He was raised by his brother, who was at the same time trying to do his own musical thing. And so did he ever grow up is probably one of the things, or did he even learn, like, responsibility? Because it's interesting to see that his character going through everything, he's like a force of nature. And he's kind of like, I see something beautiful, I want that beautiful thing. I feel a connection with this person that also plays music. I want to make music with this person. And it's every single scene with him in it is just like, wow, you're at the same times like charming as hell, but also haunting as hell simultaneously. And it's amazing that he pulls that off. And it's very amazing, and like it's hopeful, but also at the same time heartbreaking what eventually comes to him, because you want to root for him, you want him to get over his demons, but sometimes the demons just, they win over, and they won probably many, many years ago, even before help came on its way.
Yeah, that's a good call out, Bradley. The authenticity that we learn from his character, but that is such a great call out, because we see, we learn visually, we see and we learn about Allie's character, and we kind of know where she come from, and like what she has to deal with from her like part-time or her job that she has to deal with, and how she sings and performs. But we actually have no idea of Bradley Cooper's character, Jackson Maine, or Jack. We have no information for him at all when the movie starts, and then we slowly start getting that information from the dialogue, but it's in like bits and pieces. But it's such a great call out, because it definitely seems like he's never grown up. And you see that from his brother, was playing by Sam Elliott. His brother kept saying, you know, I'm tired of taking care of you. I'm tired of doing this. And it's constant. And we don't really see what that is. We see kind of a couple of different conversations as the movie kind of progresses, but we're not entirely sure the actual impact up until Allie comes into the picture. Now we're starting to see that impact. So that is definitely kind of a great call out, because it definitely is like amazing, charming, yet terribly heartbreaking too.
Yeah, and you also see a lot of differences, like kind of Allie, when she starts to be noticed by the music business part of music. She has to handle kind of all these things on her own, and kind of like force herself to deal with what's good, what's bad, what I want to do, what's going to be interesting for me, what's going to keep me busy and away from Jackson, and vice versa. At the same time, you get the feeling that Jackson has never run into any of the business dealings, that his brother probably just swooped right in. It's like, I'll take the brunt of all that. You just be Jackson Maine. And I think that's very telling about these characters and where they come from. You mentioned Allie, and I'll go right into it, that Lady Gaga plays Allie, and she's amazing too in this movie. That we know that Lady Gaga is an amazing musical performer and everything. She's done some acting. Whether or not it's been good or bad, I don't know. I haven't really seen her act in anything. but I thought she was amazing in this movie, that she's able to balance like kind of the like shy ingenue, like you see it all the time. You go into a bar and it's like, wow, that girl has an amazing voice. Why isn't she doing something else? And you get that kind of story of all those people out there that are talently gifted with their voice, but you know, they just don't know what direction to take.
Mhm.
And she's just kind of plucked out of obscurity by a random chance encounter by Jackson, because he just finds what she does amazing and beautiful, and he loves her at first sight. And she's not sure how to handle this as well. So, and she also gets like this pressure. Like, I think something that helped her out is like she's living in this house with 4 other guys that are just saying, look, you should do this, you should do this. And her dad, played by Andrew Dice Clay, who is amazing in this movie, kind of is like, you should go for this because of the business and you'll be a great star and everything. She's like, I just want to learn who this person is. And so it's also very cool to see that she knows something's up with Jackson, but she still wants to see where it goes.
Mhm.
And I think that she handled that really, really well in this movie.
I do like that the difference of the comparison, and I think you were kind of mentioning something. I'll probably come back to this a little bit later, but I definitely felt like they knew, like at least Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, like knew what sort of movie they were playing, because they kind of stepped into, I think, these roles that kind of sort of got them famous in the first place, sort of. Bradley Cooper looks great, right? Like blonde hair, blue eyes, dude's like jacked when he first came on the scene in Wedding Crashers, I believe. Maybe something even earlier
technically
than
Wet
that.
Hot American Summer.
Oh,
But
okay, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But like, I mean, like, so he is literally like what people kind of want to look like, want to be like the epitome of like sort of like Hollywood or being famous, show business, you name it, like you have that. And then when Lady Gaga came on the scene, I mean, even from that time, she was always known for her great singing, but not really known for her looks. And she had a completely different sort of persona that was out there, but it was amazing, and everybody kind of accepted that, and they accepted her. They didn't care because of like the way she looked. They accepted her because of her music and what she had to say. And I think looking at Jack and Allie's character, they both stepped into that they stepped into those personas even more, because you kind of got those characters out of this here. Now it's a little bit different because we already know Jack, and like you said, Bradley, he already started out as being super famous, so he kind of like went in there and it was a little bit easier for him. We find out maybe not so much, but at least when he started the movie, it seems like it's easy for him, whereas Allie is still working up to be this. And even though she's singing in a drag bar and she's having a great time with it and everybody's like loves her, she's still invisible, just because of the way that she looks. And the simplicity and the authenticity, saying, you know, how Jackson Maine or Jack loved her nose, right, was one of the reasons why people didn't really like her look. She had the great sound, but not even her look. So I liked just how that was being portrayed in the movie. And I think that's definitely has something to do with just how they were, how they end up becoming famous in real life.
I will say this. So first of all, to address that, this movie kind of operated as a, like, not backdoor pilot, but like a backdoor biopic of Lady Gaga's career. If people don't know, she started as a staff writer, I believe, for the producer Red One. And so I think she got the job when she was like 19, 20 years old. And then after a couple of years of writing hit songs for other folks, she decided to put her own record together. And that's what you see with, I think Kesha and Sia did the same thing. Like, they were staff writers. Yeah. They wrote for a ton of other people, and then they finally, you know, did their own thing. And so it was kind of interesting to see the, like, somewhat aversion to the spotlight. I mean, granted, they did it with like her words. You know, she only covered other people's words rather than singing her own songs. But I think it's still somewhat, you know, maintains. Like, you don't want the focus on you. You want the focus on a character or, you know, someone else. So I thought that was really interesting. And again, really easy from a writing and directing standpoint to be like, yeah, just be how you were, feel how you felt 10 years ago when you started this whole thing. I will say this though, that her acting, I feel so bad saying this. She was probably the least competent actor on the screen. I thought that. Right. I know. I feel bad saying this.
Okay, she's the worst 24 karat diamond.
Yeah, I know.
So she was like so utterly outclassed by Cooper, Elliott, Dice Clay. Like, I mean, maybe you could make a point for the cameo of Dave Chappelle, like not really, being that powerful, but like she,
so great.
But she definitely. She came off as a singer, entertainer first, not an actress. She was great for most of it. There was just like some of those times that like, yeah, she just definitely does not know how to deliver that sort of line at all. Like, it's just not in her repertoire, and she could get it. She could get there. I think we're gonna talk about this later. I think she brought more to this movie than any sort of acting slip up would pull back up and away from it. So I'm not going to fault her too much, but she was definitely like the weakest link on that acting. Sam Elliott put in a crazy performance.
Yeah.
Like insane for a supporting actor.
Yeah. And even though it like kind of starts off as that like Sam Elliott style of role that you'll see him in, like in The Big Lebowski or anything where he's like that voice of conscience just because he has that voice he could use. And you could probably see Sam Elliott playing Jackson Maine like 30 years ago. But there's something more. He like actually gets very vulnerable in this. And there's that moment where Jackson just runs up and punches him because he moved the grave of their parents and sold that land for development. And, they have it out. It's like, hey, I mean, you might want to have some type of misguided or manufactured idea of who your parents were, but I grew up with them and they were shitheads. So there's no love lost for me losing that land. It doesn't matter to anybody, but for your own like eagerness to kind of feel like you had a home.
Yeah. And even that, I know we're going to talk about a little bit of, the depiction of addictions, but he even told him that, Sam Elliott told Jackson Maine that I told you that I did this and you were just so loaded up and you're so drunk and you're just on whatever that you just don't remember. And that was like another heartbreaking moment, especially because we actually don't get too many sequences and scenes when we learn anything about Sam Elliott. I had no idea that was his brother.
Yeah.
Even until like that it hit. I think that wasn't intentional because I'm like, oh shit. Until he mentioned his brother too. He mentioned his brother being raised by him, and I'm like, oh cool. He just have a manager or this guy who helps him out. But all right, that's cool. I don't know what it is. And then you see him like helping him into the bed and like basically put him to sleep and was, and Allie was there getting excited and then, ended up having to go to sleep. And so it's like, oh shit, like this dude, like take care of, oh my gosh, they're brothers. But it adds an additional layer. And I kid you not, but he was probably in total for the movie, maybe 4 or 5 scenes total, which is still a lot of information, a lot of movie to be put in, but we actually don't get a lot of information. His character's name is Bobby, so Bobby Maine. We actually don't get a lot of information, but the sequences that we do, we get so much information just from his acting and the overall scene structure. I think it was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. They do an incredible job of like you naturally understanding what's going on. Like there's a scene with Dave Chappelle in it, and I do wish there was more Dave Chappelle in here, kind of like maybe had his drummer character like at the beginning say, all right, this is my last show, see ya Jackson, maybe have a moment at that time. But he has a very cool speech because he's like picking Jackson up off the ground in Memphis and he's just talking about like, hey, I had to choose, basically, do I continue to live this life where I don't know what tomorrow brings or anything, or once I found something that I love and everything, do I work to keep hold of that and settle down and just build a family and build a structure around me? And he chose to build that structure and everything. And he's like, yeah, I'll miss touring every day. I'll miss playing the songs every day because it was fun. It was amazing. But this is life. This is what's bringing me love right now, is having this family and these kids. And so I thought that was a very powerful scene. And I just wish we had more Dave Chappelle in this movie because of that.
I love the fact, so Dave Chappelle plays a character called George Noodles Stone that we have no idea what his name is, but it doesn't matter, right? But that one sequence, I think I actually saw, and I got kind of pissed that I was spoiled that he was even in his movie. I saw that they played the trailer or something. I'm like, motherfucker. But I think that scene also, just about everybody that was in this movie, like really spoke to how they view themselves, I think. Especially the shit that happened with the Chappelle show and the kind of falling out and him basically kind of walking away from it and everything of, as much as we can kind of gather, that definitely seems like it's people deal with shit in real life. Like these actors have dealt with shit. And so I'm glad that they can at least, through this medium of a movie, at least tell us that, hey, we dealt with some shit. We at least want to tell you some of the shit that we dealt with. And the fact that although it may seem great and amazing for right now, you at least have the power to know when to stop and when to walk away. And I think I love every sequence that Dave Chappelle's in because I think it's going to be hilarious, but it's not. But I think this is probably one of the only times that we ever seen Dave Chappelle in a serious role or semi-serious role, which it makes it even more impactful. And I think it's even more important that, I'd like to see him, and not only him, but just more of these comedians or people who are very, very up in like the times and like speak out and like outwardly talking about like politics and racism and things like that in society today outside of this movie, to see him back in this movie and play such a grounded role trying to help out Jackson, Maine.
Well, I think Dave Chappelle is he's a very grounded person. Even his comedy, I wouldn't say he tells jokes. He just tells anecdotes that happen to be some of the funniest thing I've ever seen. So it doesn't take much for a person like that to transfer that over to a serious role. I will say this though, you brought up a good point that this movie purposely does not tell us the full picture. Does anyone know what Allie's last name is?
Allie Bobally.
Yeah, and I thought that was an incredibly powerful role or powerful moment when she came out and you'd never heard her last name. Her father's in it, all of her father's friends who, if you know me, like everyone calls me by my last name, like that's how we kind of talk to each other, but you never once hear her last name. And then at the end she comes out, she says, "Oh, I'm Allie Maine," and she kind of accepts that identity. And it was awesome. Like it was such a touching moment of like, we didn't know even this character's last name, and now she comes out and identifies with her like now dead husband, which was a very interesting way of telling that story. Also, I think it was the last song. We're just talking about like real things. Lady Gaga sang, I think it was the last one. I was reading this on IMDb. Sang the last song like half hour after one of her closest friends died of cancer. So so like you
emotions are real, dude.
Oh yeah, you were talking about that, like where these people living in the music industry can draw from real life experience. As we were talking about it being like somewhat biographical on her. That was totally like she was living through loss at that exact moment. And that came across. There was people openly weeping. I saw it like 2 hours ago. There's people openly weeping during that scene.
Yeah. Absolutely love. I know that we're jumping around, but one that was actually Dave Chappelle's daughter in this movie, because I was like, damn, she looked exactly like him. And
I thought it was going to be his whole family. I was just like, that'd be so easy.
I know it wasn't his wife, and his son's too old for that. I think his son's like 14 or 15, so his son was too old. He has two other sons, but his other son was like too young. But I was like, man, that looks like his daughter. It looks like him, and it is. But at the end, for everything that actually happened with this movie, with the changes that Allie actually made, and the hair color change, and the wardrobe change,
it went back, right?
Even with that and her with performing with dancers and doing like pop and doing all this shit that she either wanted to do, her manager kind of pushed her to do. There's a lot of different saying on both sides. She goes back and sings this sort of tribute song for Jackson Maine. Her hair color is the regular color that was initially. She's performing by herself, and she's singing like how she ended up kind of going, like why she wanted to sing music. And that was a moving scene. There was 2 scenes that were very, very moving in this movie for me, at least. There's definitely more, but there was 2 that definitely kind of stood out. And that was one of them because it's a very, I guess that final sequence is the epitome of how this movie made me feel and what it was trying to do. A very simplistic, a very authentic sort of storytelling. And we're just basically trying to tell you, A, how we feel, but B, you're not alone. And I just think it was powerful.
Yeah, like especially how they cut the end of that song into like Jackson just playing it out for her at their house.
So good.
That's when it's like heartbreaking. And you're just like, damn. But I'd say like another actor that I wish had more to do, but like came off kind of stilted in this movie. I would say this person didn't act as well as Lady Gaga. Blew it. Was the British manager. His name is Rez Gaffron, who is played by Rafi Gaffron. So I guess they did that for simplicity.
Yeah.
But he has some moments, and I think the moments are cool. I think his moments about like, hey, I'm an agent, and you know what? He's doing his business thing. He's going out finding talent, and he's like, hey, you're with musicians now. Do you want to be a star? And that's a huge difference. That he's going to put a whole studio behind her and like produce an image and a branding for her and everything to make her like sing in front of 100,000 people instead of 20,000 people, like she was doing with Jackson. And it's interesting to see that his acting, like his performance, he feels kind of like too much of like the Weasley like evil music manager like you would see in Wayne's World or something like that. And I wish he played it more like straight, like as a businessman. I think that would have been more impactful, especially with like his last conversation with Jackson. Mm-hmm. Whereas it's a point where, yeah, you don't think that he killed Jackson, but he has to say his part as the person that's watching out for Allie's career. And he has to say, like, yeah, you have issues. And if there's no way right now with the condition you're in that I'm going to have you near Allie for any of her work. And if that work and your work blend together, look, one has to give. And he's basically saying, like, you know, it's just a matter of time before that water turns back into gin. And he's just like has no hope because he's seen it a million times. He's probably seen it a million times in his own clients too. And he's probably lost some clients there. And I wish we had a better actor that gives the kind of like that gravitas and that understanding for that position to make it, to show that, hey, it's not the British manager that killed Bradley Cooper or killed Jackson in this movie. It's alcoholism that killed Jackson in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's drug addiction that killed Jackson.
See,
I feel like it would have played better with a better actor.
I disagree. He was not. So Jackson was not his client. He had no reason to be empathetic at all towards him. I'm going to talk about this in the next section, the music section, a lot. But that played out exactly how I expected to play. Like there just was not a bridge moment that needed to be had. That's not how that whole game goes. It's at that level. You're not seeing someone as a humanity. You're seeing someone as literally a product. Yeah, and so and so yeah, it was cold-hearted. Like maybe it wasn't like the strongest acting performance, but it didn't need to be. Like you didn't need to see a connection to that character. That character was cold for a reason, and I thought it was played well enough that, you know, I didn't knock it.
Yeah, this movie is not about, this manager or anything, but I feel like you could have kept the words the same. Mm-hmm. I think a better actor would have delivered it more effectively.
Well, the other thing that, I kind of agree and disagree with both of you're saying. Like, I kind of understand that you need to have a character kind of like this that's all about business, that makes it a little bit more cold and a little bit more sort of removed. But then at the same time, at almost every sequence that we see with Raz, I almost called him Ra's al Ghul. That's not it. Rez, sorry. So on almost every scene that we see with Rez, he is not the best person to Allie, his own client. He's very cold. Talks about like overstepping her boundaries, talks about like they kind of butt heads at every moment of the way. Like, yes, he's there for the business, but as the sequences went on, we do not see, it does not feel like he gives a shit about her as a person. He only cares about the identity that she's creating and bringing more money for him. And so I definitely kind of agree and sort of disagree. I think they could have switched it up a little bit and had Ramon in some of those moments. And I think if Ramon, which was Allie's best friend that we started with the movie with, I think if Ramon would have had that conversation with Jackson at the end, that would have made it a bit more impactful there. Because then at that point, that Ramon knows Allie before Jackson Maine, knows Allie after Jackson Maine, knows Allie when he had to go to rehab. And so now he's coming back, and he's coming back, like Ramon's coming in to have a conversation just with Jackson. And we literally have not seen that at all in the movie, right? Now it's kind of stepping out of that, and now we have like a oh shit moment. That's what have been way more impactful, because I know people are going to initially think that, oh my gosh, Rez was the reason why. And you said it right. Like Rez was probably like kind of pushed him over the edge. No, like Rez is kind of arguing and talking about like the fact that it's a business. He's trying to protect his client for whatever he does, but he also come up as being cold the entire movie. So it's not as impactful. But I think, and I was sitting there, I was like, oh shit, if Ramon would have said that same exact thing, we know watching this movie that he loves Allie. He wants the best for her. And sometimes what Jackson is doing, or, literally what Jackson did in the past, even, before he went to rehab, really, really not only hurt her, but like almost destroyed everything that she's built up. And him saying that outside of being in the music industry, I think would have hit home a little bit harder.
Yeah, I actually really love that idea. I never thought of that. That's really cool. Yeah. I'll give you one.
Hollywood, call Warren.
Call me up. My number is 555-555-555.
I'm going to tweet your number later.
Please don't tweet my
Derek
number.
Sung is going to send you so many like motivational texts. He can't be me. He's just going to like literally just be like, yo, you can do it, Warren. I have faith in you.
Thanks, Derek. It was his birthday last week, or a couple of days actually. Anyway, what else you got, Bradley?
That'll be it for characters and story that I have. Even though there's a lot more I want to get into in the other segments.
The couple of things I know that we talked about it a lot with those characters, so I'm not going to tread over some of the things we said. A few mentions that I do want to make is when Allie and Jack first met. It was very interesting that they first met basically in a drag bar. And I love the fact that I got super nervous. And a lot of these times, I don't know if you guys did too, but a lot of these times I'm like, this guy kind of sort of playing like country, doesn't seem like he's very hip or in with it. So I thought for sure that there was going to be some domestic violence issues. And I thought for sure there was going to be some weirdness with like
cheating or...
Yeah, some like the easier things, and by easier I mean easier that we see it a lot in film and cinema. The things that are written in stories and movies a lot, but we don't get any of that. And the fact that he's just sitting there, he's talking to Ramon, so he's like going in there. He's like, oh, I mean, for me, it looks like he was just overall not only curious but so accepting that he's in a bar that's people are dressed as in drag, and he's just completely fine with it, sitting, enjoying the actual music, buying people drinks, like enjoy, because he's super famous. So I did really enjoy the fact that there was never a focus on that. There was things that were happening in the movie that are just completely accepted, that it should be. That should be the actual norm. And I really, really like that. It was, again, the simplicity and the authenticity of, oh, you've never been in somewhere before. some people are going to be awkward and kind of uncomfortable, and that's okay too. You may not be used to it. Other times, people are still going to be awkward and uncomfortable, but still being accepting to, okay, well, I'll go and play, and I'll sign somebody's prosthetic sort of boobs on there, and that's fine. And it's also a funny thing that comes back a little bit later on because she's still wearing them at the end. So I thought that was great. So I really like that sort of. I like those moments, and I think we get a lot of those in this actual movie a lot. Even the opening sequence when she's walking down the alley and you see A Star Is Born. See what I did there? Walking down the alley. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't like that scene. I thought it was super campy.
I know. That's why I loved it. But I like the fact because it was something like very, very simple. All you just show me the title card and you kind of keep going. The other thing I really like was when they were actually talking. And she Allie punches a guy for taking a photo, and they kind of go have a back and forth. But it was the fact that they're not entirely sure, and we at the audience are not entirely sure what's going to happen. And it's like, do they like each other? Do they not like each other? He clearly wants to help her out, but he doesn't want to overstep. And he even mentions this to the driver, who's like, I think I fucked that up. He's like, no, that's okay. But I like they at least kind of injected that awkwardness into the movie. And I think especially how all this fame comes to Allie and she doesn't know how to handle it. That's real. Nobody knows. You can't plan for that shit. Like, it happens. How are you going to deal with it? You're going to have these awkward sequences of you're not entirely sure what to do. Just like Jackson found her this crazy talent, he doesn't know what to do. He's trying to kind of figure it out also. And so I like those moments in the actual movie. It definitely gave it the sense to kind of slow it down, and it definitely added that realism and injecting that consistently back into the movie more and more to make me really believe these characters and how Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga stepped out of being those people and stepped into these roles and stepped into Jack and Allie. I thought that was very, very impactful.
Yeah, I think you make a good point with the just how they didn't add the things that you would usually see in a story like this. It was very stripped down, and they just throw you into a point and then you end up at a point, and it's not like your traditional narrative, which I really like movies when they do this, for better or worse. One thing I really liked was when she first goes to Jackson's hotel room after the concert and everything. And she says, I gotta go to the bathroom. And like most times in a movie, we'll see the person that's waiting in the bedroom to see I wonder what they're doing in there. But no, we get the camera in the bathroom. We see it's just a quick pad down of sweat or anything. It's not anything salacious or anything. It's you know what? Human people will do some very mundane human stuff. And I thought that was really good to see that they just played it forward. They didn't tell us oh, it's 2 years later or 5 months later or anything like that. It's just it fades to black, it fades out to black, fades into black, and then we're at another moment in time, which I thought was really cool.
I thought the temporal ambiguity was amazing, where you basically only got two indicators. You had the whole 10 years after 2004 for the first European leg, and then you had iHeartRadio, which has only really existed in the last 7 years or so. So definitely locks it in the 2010s, but realistically, not really. It could exist in 2010. It could be a present day thing. The other thing on that was apparently in some of the earlier versions of this movie, I mean, not script, literally the versions that have come out, there's been the guy character has cheated on his wife. And so they have thrown in some of that stuff. And I agree with the two of you that I think by making it strictly about alcoholism, it strengthened that point. If they threw in cheating or spousal abuse or any of these other kind of easy to tack on things, I think it would have increased the drama but lessened the actual hit of the movie. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Blue, you have anything before we move on to the next section?
My only thing about the acting and story that I haven't said is that Eddie Griffin is alive, and that's a good thing. I legit hadn't heard about him since 2005. And welcome to the Eddie Griffin Show. Apparently, that was freaking awesome.
Is that the show with the whistle? It's the Andy Griffin Show, but it's okay.
I haven't seen Eddie Griffin since Chappelle's Show. So
Undercover Brother, probably.
That
was him, right?
Maybe.
Yeah,
that was Eddie Griffin and Dave Chappelle and a lot of other people.
I don't think Dave Chappelle was an Undercover Brother.
Yeah, he was. He was Conspiracy Brother.
He's Conspiracy Brother.
Okay, well, that's 2002. So, okay.
Well, yeah, it's been nearly 2 decades since I've heard anything from Eddie Griffin.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're definitely going to be probably talking about a bit more in story and characters in these next couple sections, but I'm curious, and we talked a little bit about, alcoholism, but this movie definitely expands outside of just alcohol. We have seen that, not only Jackson Maine is drinking heavily a lot. The movie opens up as he's not only leaving a set, he drinks a bottle of gin in the car, and as they're running out of gin, he's trying to find a bar for another drink. And I think if you were to go back and rewatch this movie from a lens of alcohol abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse and substance abuse and all these things with addiction, you can easily see like red flags all over the place. And so I'm curious to kind of get some of your points on, the depictions of addictions in this actual movie, how that felt, and how do you think people will be kind of bringing, like how people will take things away from this movie. Yeah.
First of all, did everyone notice the hugest red flag in the second shot of the movie when he drives by the billboard and it's just 4 nooses?
Yes, I did. I
saw that.
And
I'm like, so I warned it for this film. I saw the first trailer and I was like, oh, that looks cool. But I didn't look up anything else about this movie. I went in. I thought it was a PG-13 rom-com. Honestly, that's where my headspace was because that's where the trailer was. I didn't know it was a hard R, unbelievable hard R, and I didn't know that it was going to deal with like the subject matter that it went with. So yeah, like they really went there. Like the whole time I thought she was gonna. Well, they were dropping F-bombs. I know you see a little bit of, Bradley Cooper's, balls, but like
I don't what? No, you don't.
I'm just tantalizing all the ladies that listen to this podcast. They're gonna go out and go see this.
See Bradley Cooper's left nut. Say what?
See Bradley Cooper's boobies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that nicely coiffed chest hair. So the entire time, first of all, they did a wonderful job portraying addiction, and through the rehab process, through multiple steps of like family intervention, friend intervention, like professional intervention, the people that help you professionally, I guess, like both psychiatrists plus your band manager, like coming in and saying, and none of it works. And I think we've reached a place, not in this country at least, with not necessarily with alcohol, but like certainly other drugs, specifically opioids, where we're hitting a place where none of this is really working, and it's very real to this day where it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. If you get bitten by that bug, you're falling down. And you're falling down a hole that's about 6 feet under the ground. That's it. And it was a very, very real adaptation of what that story is. I mean, literally, like I thought Bradley Cooper's little man bun and his rosy red cheeks because he was always drunk and his piercing blue eyes were like the feature of this film. You just look at that man's face and it was just like, yeah, he's got a lot going for him, but there's demons under his soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's great because there's so many shots, and I'm glad you mentioned this, Bullet, because Bradley Cooper's character Jackson has like facial hair, and he has long hair in this movie, and you can clearly tell, and there are sequences that they highlighted his look, like how his facial expressions were, but they definitely kind of showed his face when he was when he was intoxicated. And then there are sequences when people were commenting on the fact that when he wasn't he wasn't drinking, and how his behavior acted and how he was changing drastically in different scenes and different circumstances, but it was kind of like night and day. And I think it only, and it wasn't, and again, like, one of the things I talked about, it wasn't like a public service announcement. It just talks about the fact that, people deal with this shit. And I think it's such a powerful call out of people deal with this disease. And even Lady Gaga says, outright that it was a disease. People are dealing with this. People, just seems they can't sort of cope. And we even find out earlier on that his father was an alcoholic, and his father basically treated him like a drinking buddy this entire time. And we find this out by Bobby of like, this dude was a drunk. He didn't do shit for you. You idolize him because you were drinking buddies, and that was it. But that was like his kind of downfall. And I think it was really tough to kind of see how Jackson is kind of basically dealing with this through the entire movie. Also, another spoiler, because I'm kind of upset about this, so the fact that just looking at the IMDb page of this, it kind of sort of gives that away. I don't know if you guys read the IMDb page. I was trying to start reading these, but I guess not anymore. But it says, a young musician helps a young singer and actress find fame, even as age and alcoholism sends his own career into a downward spiral.
I think
that's fine. That's the first 20 minutes of the movie.
That's been the plot of this movie for the last 4 versions of it too.
Fair.
Yeah.
I still think it's spoiler.
Warren, you do bring up a good point. I think due to that like temporal displacement, you didn't really know if Jack was using or not in any one of the scenes. And you had to rely on other people talking to him to kind of gauge where his character was at, which I thought was it didn't really beat you over the head with like, oh, he's drinking now versus he's not drinking now. You had to kind of conceptualize versus based on the surroundings.
Well, it's unfortunate because, I sat here and I looked at this and said, I know a lot of my friends who are substance abusers, who has addictions, who are using, and I can physically see like the color of their skin, their scent, like how they're acting. Everything just drastically changes. And I know it's it's a joke we talk about, people being drunk, but this is like different, it's when people have, that need for it, and they clearly got something else going on that's kind of deep down, and you can physically see. And they even kind of talk about this of when Jackson came to watch her dance on one of her like numbers, and she says, "Oh, you smell good." That was just one like kind of the small thing about the fact that, okay, that's a hint that he has not been drinking for at least a couple days, and he was given some profound lines when he wasn't drinking. But then when he was drinking, you're not entirely sure exactly what sort of Jackson that you're getting. And so it definitely made, it definitely hit home. It definitely hit home for me a lot, just, dealing with this stuff, in my past and like my history. But I'm always glad to kind of see, and I'm always glad when Hollywood or people kind of put this on the film, just because it's like, man, this is exactly how I felt. I just didn't know how to put it into words. And so now you see it. And so everybody can like get on the same page together.
Yeah, like when I look at the way they portray Jackson in this movie, for some reason I compare it to Leaving Las Vegas, which is another movie about alcoholism. And like in that portrayal, like it's very over the top. It's Nick Cage like showing like the worst of alcoholism. And I like that they kind of mute like the behavior of alcoholism on here, and it's more just about like the people around him discovering his issue. And until it becomes like a out in front problem. And I think they actually handle that really well, where it's like at first, and I think this is where like Lady Gaga shines a lot, is that she sees like, oh yeah, he's had a few drinks. Yeah, he's going to pass out. I'll take care of him. Then at the time, like he stops drinking because he's with her and they're enjoying themselves so much, like singing, making love, being a couple. But then also something comes up and he's had another drink and she has to do that talk, and like you see couples just like whisper to one another, it's like, have you had a couple drinks tonight, that type of thing. And like just to see him like get into that position where one, it still blows my mind that he portrays like something that a lot of musicians in the past have done, where they get fully loaded and then they can perform on stage like it's nothing during that Roy Orbison performance. Like every time I see a picture of Jimmy Page and he drinks a whole liter of Jack Daniels, I'm wondering, how does he hold the guitar after that? Who knows? It's just, they've just done it so many times that it doesn't affect him anymore. It's crazy. But it's like, wow, amazing talent. But then all of a sudden, like you start to see like these things that usually they play for humor. It's the bumbling drunk guy. Oh, he fell into the bushes and passed out and everything. And like there's some humor, but also at the same time, they're able to rep it up expertly when they get to the Grammys and everything. And you start seeing he's pointing at the video of her and it's like, oh, it's you, and then like they're like, everybody's laughing and chuckling, but no one in the movie theater that's watching this is laughing right now.
Yeah,
because they know this is messed up. And then all of a sudden he pisses his pants in front of how many millions of people on TV?
Everybody. Yeah. Just a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, and they do it so well. And even like the brief like AA meetings that he goes to, like, yeah, that first step is rough too. You're going to be in a room full of strangers and you have to admit something about yourself. And this is coming from someone that probably hasn't defined who he is as a person his whole life, because he's had his brother take care of any type of things that might get in his way that he can't handle. And he's been left alone to play music and enjoy his life. And so what stories does he have to tell in that scenario? Except that he drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really cool that to see also there's another disease in this movie that kind of leads to his frustrations and probably led to I don't know if it led to the drinking, but the drinking, it's definitely something he sees as a catalyst to start drinking, which is tinnitus. Like they have this time where they're doing a hearing test for him, and they want him to wear these special monitors so he can hear it. And he's like, I can't stand them and everything. I just want to play. But ultimately it starts to affect how he plays too. That he does not, he's not playing as well as he used to because the tinnitus is getting worse. His drinking's getting worse. And ultimately what he loves to do most is getting away from him.
Can I just put a quick little PSA? This is completely serious too. No joking. You only get one chance at your hearing. Hearing aids can only do so much. Cochlear implants. There's literally no way to supplement it once it's gone. If you go to concerts, put in ear protection. Honestly, like they sell them dirt cheap at CVS, and you pop them in right before it. Like, I play in a band. I practice every Sunday night. We're doing it literally we had to push this till, later in the evening because of band practice. I can hear because of earplugs. I can hear pretty well because of earplugs. And just please, if you lose that sense, it's gone. It's gone forever. You will never hear it the same way again. As someone who, we're going to get to the music section later, but like as someone who sound is infinitely interesting to me, being deprived of that sense is heartbreaking. So sorry, not to soapbox on it, but like just put in ear protection. If you're going out to a club, if you're going out to a, dance party, like anything that's going to be super loud, pop something in. I promise you couldn't have heard the person talking to you anyways over the music. So wearing ear protection will literally not do anything. Your body will still absorb all those bass frequencies that we know and love, and you get to boogie your butt down during it. And you won't even notice the difference, except your ears will. So please wear ear protection.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the one thing that I was going to mention, Brylan, was the movie actually starts off hinting the fact that he has tinnitus. In the first opening, the first thing that we see is he takes some pills, takes it with a drink, and right when he does that, you hear that tone that's happening. So that was literally the first few, like maybe 3 minutes of the movie, and immediately I was like, kind of sort of getting some hints of Baby Driver, sort of like what they did there too, and I was like, I wonder, but they didn't mention it. They didn't say anything about it until over, an hour and 45 minutes after that sequence. And now it's like, oh shit. Okay. And he's talking about it while he's at the rehab facility. I'm talking to a sponsor about that. And there's so many like breadcrumbs that this movie sort of left that was definitely intentional, maybe not. But for a second viewing, I think you'll start seeing, you'll be able to notice a lot of these things, a lot of these picks up, and it was a pretty they are pretty like obvious with it. It's not until the point where things start hitting later on that everything else before start making more sense. Yeah, the only other thing, though, that I did want to talk about, because I know the next section that we're going to talk about is kind of the music and the directing of Bradley Cooper. When it comes with like the depiction of like addiction, I definitely kind of talked about, I do have kind of experience with like my friends having that, but fuck, I did not see that, Jackson Maine was going to take his life. Even after like the conversation with her manager, and even after the conversation that he had with his sponsor, and it was heartbreaking because he attempted a try in his life. He tried to take his life, and he tells his story that he does there. He puts the belt around his neck and he hangs it. He tried to hang himself, and then it doesn't work, and the ceiling fan falls on the ground. And it's kind of it's a story played for laughs, but after that he's laughing, he's talking about it, and he's like, yeah, my father didn't even notice for almost a year that the ceiling fan was in the ground, that nobody even knew that I tried to end it while his father was alive. And we know it to this time that his father died when he was 13 years old. And so the fact that
tried it when he was young.
Exactly. And so that is what it makes it like, oh, so hard. Like that's what makes it like even more terrible and heartbreaking, that he knew at least that something was going on that young, 12, 13-year-old knew something was going on, but he kind of turned to the bottle, turned to like those, those things, those drugs, those whatever that he can do to take the pain away for a little bit. That's what makes it like even more kind of that like even worse. And to the fact, then fast forward all the way to after he has that conversation, and Lady Gaga's character, Ally, kind of decides, you know what, I'm not going to go overseas. Like, we want to work on our second album and all this stuff that you kind of knew that what's kind of happening. Is that why she doesn't want to go overseas? But that she was actually lying because Jackson had the conversation with Rez earlier. And so already it's to the point where there's nothing kind of going for him. And that was, it was also heartbreaking, the fact that, Bobby was the one person that took him from the rehabilitation center back to home. And he finally got a chance to like tell him that, it wasn't Dad who I idolized. It was you. You're the person who I wanted to be. And, I'm sorry for taking your voice. Right. And so it's very sad. It's very heartbreaking because you get this character who finally, when he becomes clean, he's able to kind of like speak how he actually been feeling. He finally kind of apologizes to Ally. He apologizes to his brother. He starts finally kind of talking about these things he never could really kind of get to. He never could talk about. But I think at one point when he starts seeing that, my actions are causing me all this pain and I'm sorry for it, but now my actions have caused everybody else so much pain to the point where now I'm stunting my wife's career, at that point, I'm not entirely sure what else to do. And so I didn't see it coming. It definitely it still affects me, but it affects me because it's so many people. And I think we even had like a couple of, there was an OD earlier this year. There are just so many sort of like talented people who feel like that's the answer. And I know when Blue was talking about, his PSA for that, but I had a lot of friends, and I even had, friends this year kind of commit suicide. And it's been for the last maybe 2 or 3 years in a row. I've had at least maybe 1 or 2 friends from either high school or college commit suicide. And so it's, you know, when you see that sort of thing kind of happen, and there was one that's been as early as, you know, last month. And when you see that happening, you see that in the movie. That's another reason why I think these movies and the simplicity and the authenticity of how it makes people feel and putting that stuff on screen, because that shit happens all the time and people feel like there's no way out. They don't have anybody to talk to. When you put that on screen and this movie becomes popular, not because of everything else, but it becomes popular from the biggest things that they're trying to say. I think that's what makes it important. That's what makes it impactful. Like, you don't have to have anything that talks about, anything to do with, diverting somebody, because if somebody has that thought, they're going to continue to do it. But if I would say, if anybody out there, if you do have a thought, definitely kind of reach out to your family, reach out to your friends, reach out to anything that you can. Like, you're definitely not alone in it. You never will be alone in it. Everybody's going to have some sort of feelings that's similar to you. And talking that out is definitely going to be way more impactful, because, your life is important and you definitely should kind of cherish it. And anytime that somebody else thinks that, my life is not worth it, that's all a lie. But it's a disease and you can't fight it on your own. So definitely know that you do have help out there, and definitely you can turn to any help that you can. So let's talk about the music and the directing of A Star Is Born. So Bradley Cooper's first movie. I think this is his first movie as directing. I'm sure he's directed some partial other movies, some parts of it, but I think this was probably one of the more kind of marquee versions of it.
I'm going to start with his first acting movie.
Acting and directing.
This is his first feature-length directorial debut.
Right.
100%. I don't think he's done anything else.
Well, I'm going to toss it to the music guru, Blewett. What you got to talk about some of the music and the directing of this movie?
So apparently they sang this all live at Lady Gaga's request, which is awesome, because I was watching that. So, I mean, Bradley Cooper didn't play a single thing on the guitar. He did better than most people do. Most people have this weird claw that they just kind of grip the neck and then don't move their hand afterwards, and then just move.
He showed off the sustain note really well.
Yeah. He pantomimed it okay, better than most. But apparently, they sang it all live, because I was watching. You could watch breath, how your chest moves during those singing moments, and you could definitely see those slight differences for someone who's not actually capturing the take. They pulled it off. It was kudos. That's a technological feat. I will say this, that from the directing, let's talk about the directing standpoint first. There was no score, right? So it was all just the original music. There's nothing underscoring it. And I think that it really played into the ambiguity of how this film was approached. Usually, we've talked about this before, but usually you can get an action that happens, and if you underscore it with certain music, you can change the tone of it. For example, if you have Luke Skywalker fighting Darth Vader, and Luke Skywalker knocks Darth Vader down, you can either hit that with a triumphant trumpet blast, and it's oh yeah, we got him, or you could choose to underscore it with maybe something subtler and minor and a little bit more pensive, and it's well, yeah, because he just kicked his father down. Spoiler alert for a 40-year-old movie.
Bro, come on.
And so, but that's the thing where you can a good composer will really draw out what a director wants in those scenes subconsciously, and this movie didn't have it, and it was noticeable. There were scenes that were just utterly in complete silence except for the dialogue, and you as an audience member didn't really know what the underlying concept was. Should I feel happy? Should I feel sad? Should I laugh? Should I cry? It was very confusing. And I thought that was part of the brilliance of this film, that they just only used original songs for the music moments. They kept on coming back to it. With that, elaborating on that, I think that Lady Gaga might have been the most important part of this movie. So there's folks that were originally attached to it. Beyonce was, I think, the biggest one, and I think she got pregnant and then Bradley Cooper stepped in. Like they wanted to redo this movie, I believe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. And so they had a bunch of names attached to it. And then I think Bradley Cooper did American Sniper. And that's what was like, he started writing the script for this during that time. But I don't think Beyonce could have done what Lady Gaga did. If you look at the credits, all of the songs were pretty much written by her. Well, with a couple exceptions, like Bradley Cooper had a couple. There was Mark Ronson, I'm sure. He was writing credits, but I'm sure he's mostly music. And there was a couple other folks that were in there.
Yeah, Lady Gaga brought in her homies for it. So DJ White Shadow's on the pop things. Mark Ronson's on the pop things. Apparently Lucas Nelson, Willie Nelson's son, helped Bradley Cooper out with the
that was his backing
the Countrified Rock.
Yeah, that was backing band. So, I think that no other pop star could have, because they don't have the writing chops that Gaga has and the connections to the writing community. It wouldn't have happened. It would have. I think Cooper was your visual. Lady Gaga filled in literally everything else, which was a perfect partnership. Apparently, they had to pitch this thing, basically just iPhone videos of the two of them hanging out. And do it, and like it makes sense. It's like, yeah, he going on what we said before. He has the acting chops, she has the singing chops and the writing chops. This movie also was unbelievably realistic to the music industry. We were talking about this before, where people are products. That's it. I thought one of the best lines in the whole film was the whole concept of like, people are listening now, they're not going to listen forever. Say what you need to say and be real to yourself. I thought it was very interesting that the fact that she didn't. Her songs before and then later in the movie were heartfelt and had real things. But her pop songs when she was on SNL were like, "Why didn't you call me?" Like it was the most stereotypical. And I thought that was a nice little subtext of like, hey, people are listening, say something. And then she just goes to like every single other pop star. It's one of the reasons I like the Asian character. Like, he cared about his product. He cared about nurturing that product. He cared about that product getting big so it could make him money. And that's it.
Yeah, Warren, but up? I mean, that's also like one of the most heartbreaking scenes too. Sorry, I'm not Warren. But
yeah.
It was heartbreaking.
You guys do look alike.
Sorry, I think that's also like, I'm sort of glad that it wasn't like a stereotypical, when she has the time to say it, she's going to then say what she means, because that doesn't really happen. Like, it's not, I think it's realistic, the fact that once she's up there, she still has to do, like, she doesn't really have too much of a choice, maybe, right? It's still also unclear. It's a big gray area, and that's what I really liked about this movie, because you're not sure how she's feeling about changing her hair color and wearing these things and kind of having these songs and having backup dancers. Now, you knew how she felt about having the backup dancers the first instance that she says, no, I don't want them. But then after that, you see her with these backup dancers. And so I really like that in this movie, you have Bradley Cooper's character, Jackson, who talks about, like, make sure this is what you want and kind of slow down and kind of take this in. And do you hear yourself? Do you hear yourself right now? Like, he's having a lot of these sort of like thoughts because he was there. He also kind of lived that before she did. But she was also way more famous than he ever was. But I love the fact that she was famous.
No, because we saw him on the decline on the other side. We don't know his absolute fame. We don't know his regrets from that era.
I thought it. So, oh, that's true. That is very true. Yeah, I kind of
know that she's getting the first taste of success because
right, and he's getting his last taste. He's getting his corporate gigs.
I don't know if he got a Grammy or anything. I didn't think that he got any of that information. But you did.
We don't know.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, but I like that he at least. Like, it was a lot of gray area because you're not sure if that's the music that she wants to play or not, and sometimes you may not have the biggest choice to kind of affect or kind of play the music that you want to play. And although he's telling her to, say what you want to say, you don't really see that. You don't see her immediately kind of do that like a storytelling. Yeah. Oh, cool. I have the ability. I know it's easy. I'm just going to do it. No, that doesn't happen. And I'm really glad for that they didn't make that happen.
Two things on that. First of all, I loved there was a little moment when they were recording in the studio and they had to bring the piano in so she could play it. And they were doing a little bit of playback on it. And it was piano with a little bit of electronic drums in it. Like it wasn't even a beat. It was just random, like, a couple backbeats. You'd have the electronic snare, and you just
couple loops, repeat.
Yep, and you just had that moment where, like, it was the crossover from her doing a real authentic thing, and then she doesn't even realize it, but it's being warped into a product, into a commercialized ideal. I thought that was a really nice, subtle touch. The other thing, and I think to end on the whole portrayal of the music industry and, like, kind of how it worked, there are an unbelievable amount of people out there with talent. I think one of my favorite stories is this lady won a game show, and her last job before that was a backup singer at a random bar in Texas. Now, that lady turned out to be Kelly Clarkson, who has had a nearly 20-year career spanning insane amount of hit singles. And she wasn't even the primary singer at a club like that. And it really just unbelievably drives home how, like, fickle that industry is. And in any industry, really, like, you could pick anything, and it's like, there's other developers out there that were doing stuff like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, but they just happened to make the right product at the right time for the right people, and it just went from there. There is an unbelievable amount of failures out there that have had every bit the same amount of talent as the people that had succeeded in that same industry. And I loved that. I loved how they drove that home. That, like, she is a random girl from some random bar that randomly bumped into some guy that randomly got put in front of some arbitrary, A&R dude who pumped her up, and she randomly had a big hit that people liked. That was very authentic in my mind, and really drove home the grounded realism that this movie had. Sorry, that wasn't a ton about music. I'm sure if you guys bring up other points, it was more like the music industry. But, like, I think my point on it, no music, and, like, oh yeah, obviously, like, the country rock pop songs were really cool and, like, super poignant and awesome. And when Lady Gaga comes in for the duet harmony in the first song that they do was chill-inducing. But yeah, I feel like there's other bigger stuff that we can talk about, but then they, like, wrote a couple pretty pop songs. Sorry.
The chill-inducing song that you're talking about, Shallow, was the biggest point that I wanted to make. Besides, I think you probably hit on all my other points, but I shed a tear when she got up there, and it was definitely a bit of the campy and cheesiness again from, like, the opening sequence of, like, the title card, but I got, like, legit chills when she was singing that, because he kind of basically wrote that and kind of, like, set up the song for her. So, like, be like, okay, cool, like, this is what we're going to do. And she finally kind of sat there and kind of sung with him, and, like, for that first time, and she was looking at the crowd, and just, she had such an authentic and, like, real look on her face. Like, I can't believe, like, would you go out, like, would you go and sing to all these people, like, randomly, when you've only sung in front of, like, a crowd of people who you, like, your coworkers?
I'll tell you personally, really I would poop my pants on that stage,
and then you'll sing, right?
Probably.
Well, that's fun fact. That is Browland's talent, so that would be on par. Like, he would get pulled out on stage, be like, "Browland, poop, Browland."
What you got, Browland?
Not poop. But yeah, y'all bring up some really good points. Like, I think with Bradley Cooper's directing, I can't tell if I'm more impressed by his directing or his acting in this movie, because I found both of them very impressive. Like, I love every moment of this film, how it's actually directed and like the cinematography of it, because the framing of every shot is just a little too close in. Like even with the first like stage shot, you're just like looking at it like, oh, that's Bradley Cooper's face. Excuse me, Mr. Cooper, I'm all up in your shit while you're on stage trying to play a song. And it actually works for every type of scene that they actually have with those very close-up shots, whether it's him meeting Lady Gaga for the first time. You see her like just slowly turn her eyes while she's singing that French song, and turn her eyes on top of the bar and look at him, and he looks at her. That it's just very close and uncomfortable, but also at the same time intimate. Tells a lot about what's going on with these characters. And it's also something where you can't get away from it. It's there right in front of your face at all times. I like how everything is very stripped down. Like you said, there's not a score behind this movie. It's only about the songs that they make, and I think that's telling for the characters that they create in this film. I think also you bring up a great point, Bluid, with seeing the difference of like building a star like through the machine of the record labels versus someone that's a musician that just picks up an instrument and just played a song because of love of music. It's cool to see that difference, and it's almost jarring to see the difference between Ali on stage with Jackson versus Ali on stage at SNL, even though both are very well crafted pieces of music. Like, and I think that's kind of telling because Lady Gaga, even though she started with pop, her more like stripped down stuff, I mean, is probably more true to who she is as a musician that she's doing now. But I would say ultimately, I think with the songs, even though I like Shallow, and yeah, I definitely got chills when Shallow was playing. And I think they do a really great job with these stage scenes that even though everything is close up, they're turning the camera constantly. That the camera's constantly just doing these mini pans and just kind of shifting on an angle and doing these mini pans that just adds a lot of cool action to what's going on. But I think probably the best scene in this movie is when Allie's alone on stage. Jackson gives her that moment to sing her own song called Always Remember Us This Way. It is a beautiful song. It is chilling. It tells a lot about where she is and what's about to happen in this movie. And it pretty much sets the tone for what this whole story is about. And I want this song to win. The song that'll probably win an Oscar is probably the Diane Warren one, which I think is the final song. But also give Lady Gaga an award for that performance too. It is spellbounding.
There's so many songs in this movie that could easily win. So I'll be very curious. But I also that's a good point because I also love that song. I forgot about it for a moment. So thanks, Brylan, for bringing that up because I really liked it. So, guys, we have made it to our conclusion and our kind of final thoughts. So, Brylan, what will we say in your final lasting thoughts for A Star Is Born?
This is a fantastic movie. I definitely want you to go out and see it. Definitely see it in Dolby Cinema. The music for this movie, if you listen to it in Dolby Cinema, is amazing, and the camera work is amazing on that big screen. Definitely a movie to see in the best quality possible. I think it's an expertly told tale that's simple on purpose just to elevate all the emotion, the acting. And you have the whole gamut of emotions happening here. Laughing, loving, grief, horror. You got it all. It's an amazing film.
Yeah, I absolutely love this movie. I mean, I think at this point, there's only two films that are by far my favorite this year. One's a documentary, and this one here is, I think he even said it, a bit of a biopic. I think he called it biopic, but a biopic of, Lady Gaga. But, with, Won't You Be My Neighbor and now A Star Is Born, these movies by far kind of transcend, I think, what that original sort of genre is, one being a documentary, this being, I would call it a musical. I think I definitely will call it a musical, although I know what you mean. The fact that a musical, there's like dialogue in the actual song form that kind of moves the story along. But I think at this point, it's like that sort of genre has also changed a good amount.
Right.
So I definitely would kind of call this a musical, but I absolutely kind of loved it. And I just love the fact that it's the simplicity of characters, of actual events, of things that people are hurting, loving, trying to fight today. And it's very prescient of what people have to deal with. And so it's nice to see that on screen. Blew it.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was 2 hours, 20 minutes, which is insanely long for a movie that doesn't have a 20-minute CGI space battle in it. You know, like seriously, like you can when you stop plot to have people punching things for 20 minutes, it's funny how short a movie can become. You know, when you just take those out, it's like, oh, good guys punch bad guys, gone. And it really guided you through a full tale of these people. It honestly felt like a condensed Netflix show. I remember watching in the theater, watching some of the end sequences and being like, wow, remember back to when we just met these characters and like how they were then and how they are now, which is something you normally don't get for a movie that's from a movie. Like normally you get it from a TV show, specifically multi-seasons, TV shows. And to cram all that in and not feel rushed was freaking remarkable. Like brilliant job on Cooper's part to keep the story going. Definitely would recommend it. Music's phenomenal on it. Lady Gaga really outdid herself on this one.
And with that, we are the Down in Front podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in to our full review of A Star Is Born, directed by Bradley Cooper. Brylan, where can people find more of your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Bryland, Brilund. You can also find me putting up many movie and TV reviews on Instagram at I am Bryland. And I'm also the host of the Gamescast, twitch.tv/Downfront Podcast. We are playing through Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 right now.
And Shredder, what you got coming up? You got any shows?
Next
Bradley Cooper's gonna pull Blewett up on stage.
Oh, like Bruce Springsteen and Monica. That is a reference for our 47-year-old population.
No idea. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And Brylan.
Yeah. No, it's you can find us at My News Music or My News Band on most major platforms. We should do some stuff, other things, and things also. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll play plenty of birthday parties as long as you're in your 60s. Like, we want some of that AARP money. We can charge higher rates. I shouldn't be telling you this now, but like we can charge higher rates for it. So please, if you're about to hit a retirement birthday party, hit us up. Also, if you want... Man, I can't make fun of this movie with Jesse. Like this is like,
nah, you really shouldn't. I was like, whatever you say, you should probably.
I can't. So let's just go with this. JesseSucks.com.
Jesse's Fame Monster. Whitemail.com.
I'm just kidding. I love Jesse. He's like one of my favorite people in the world.
Yeah.
Man,
yeah. He's better than Guillermo.
That's very true. It goes. Yeah, I'm not going to do the ranking right now. It's going to hurt people's feelings.
Jesse Kyle.
Kyle's way down there. I don't think. I mean, he's a ginger, so he's not really even a human.
He doesn't have a soul.
Yeah.
Like sucks. Check out more of our work at downandfrontpodcast.com. We're going to be on Twitter, Facebook. I mean, literally anywhere and everywhere we have something going on. We are doing a lot of different things. So check out us on Twitter, _JFP. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/downandfrontpodcast. If you check us out on Instagram, we're also on Instagram at downandfrontpodcast.com. You can also, if you want to go and help us out, we have early episodes and bonus content for our patrons, people who support us and kind of running the show. So definitely become a patron on patreon.com/Down in Front Podcast. Thanks so much, everybody, for kind of joining in for tonight. I'm super pumped about this review. Our next recording will be Venom. Super pumped to hear this and see this and review this Sony movie. So I'm very curious to hear everybody's thoughts about it, if they liked it or if they hated it. So I'm super pumped about that. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night and sleep well. And we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm waving.
Bye-bye.
It is kind of unfortunate with the whole, like...